JBN, we keep you informed. Crimes that rocked the nation, Episode 3, Mrs Lynch Part 2. The police, headed by Senior Superintendent Isadore Hibbert, headed to the Lynch's residence in Jacksonville expecting to find Mrs. Lynch. No one was at home. This was after Hibbert met with top officers of the bank, had discussions with them, as well as the bank's top security officer at the time and the former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Herman Ricketts. The house was a three-story structure. All doors and windows were securely locked. A ladder was found. Access was gained by forcing a window open. Inside, there was no doubt in Hibbert's mind that this was a crime scene. The flooring showed signs of being recently scrubbed. However, blood stains could be seen on furniture, in crevices on the floor, and the traces of blood on the ceiling of one of the rooms. In this room, pieces of furniture were rearranged. There was a cutlass on the steps of the second floor leading to the top floor. On the stove in the kitchen was a pot full of half-cooked or partially cooked cashew sap in preparation for Mr. Lynch's favorite brew. The air conditioning units were going at full blast. There were signs of burning outside in the yard beside a very high concrete wall. In the washroom outside were several partially used mops with buckets of dirty water. Hibbert said he was satisfied that foul play had taken place in that house, and so they went house to house investigating and learned the following. On the evening that Leary returned from his farm out in the country, it had rained heavily. A schoolboy living in close proximity to the Lynch's home told the police that about 10 o'clock on the night in question, he heard a shriek coming from that house. A shriek he described as so agonizing, he would never forget it as long as he lived. He was certain it was a man's voice. Unfortunately, because he was a minor, his mother refused to allow him to testify. Neighbors saw a large fire that night by the fence of the property and called the fire brigade. On the arrival of the fire brigade, Mrs Lynch was reportedly seen attending to the fire. She told them all was well. She was merely doing a little spring cleaning. They returned to base. No one saw Mrs. Lynch leave the premises or return. Since Leary turned up missing, his car was nowhere in sight. The Water Commission had been instituting water lockups in the area during the period. It was clear that was what resulted in the poor attempt at cleaning up. Where was Leary Lynch? Important questions needed to be answered. Among them, where was Mrs. Lynch? Why did she disappear from her residence? What had happened to Leary Lynch? The house was put under surveillance. Instructions were given that should Mrs. Lynch turn up at her residence, she should be detained and Hibbert should be informed immediately. About 10:30 that night, Hibbert received a phone call that she had been detained whilst attempting to enter her home. As instructed, she was escorted to the Constant Spring police station. Hibbert said he arrived there within minutes. Mrs. Lynch was escorted to the CIB office. She appeared haggard, restless, and untidy. According to Hibbert, he observed that she was suffering from a severe incised wound on the top of her right foot. The foot was swollen and appeared septic. Since the report made was one of a missing person, and whilst there was suspicion of murder, no body had been found. She was questioned as to her whereabouts over those several days. She gave the name and address of a young lady friend with whom she said she had stayed. Asked how she came by the wound on top of her foot, she said that a drinking glass fell, broke, and caused the wound. When asked if she knew the whereabouts of her husband, her startling reply was, "You ask me about my husband, me hungry. I could eat a good Chinese food from Jade Garden right now." Mrs. Lynch was at that stage advised that her husband had been reported missing, and that it seemed that she was not anxious to assist them in finding him. Mary said she was tired and not feeling well, and so the interview ended. The following day, she was medically examined by the government medical officer. He found that the wound was self-inflicted, consistent with a machete wound. Also, it was consistent with having been inflicted on the date Leary returned home from his farm. That same day, the police party, along with a team of experts including forensic scientists, checked the car belonging to Mrs. Lynch for blood stains and other clues. The house was checked for blood stains. Human blood was detected on fragments of burnt carpet and clothing. mops and buckets with water used in the cleaning process. A number of items were seized and taken to the forensic lab for further tests. Now the police were further convinced that Leary Lynch was murdered. However, in order to establish murder, the body had to be found. Where was Leary Lynch's body? That was the big question. Help was sought via the news media, radio, TV, newspaper advertisements, appealing for information about this missing person. A reward of $100,000 was offered. A number of tips were received concerning burnt skeletons. Some turned out to be human, some animals, but nothing of Leary Lynch. Another interview was scheduled for Mrs. Lynch at the Constant Spring Police Station. She had, by then, secured the services of a team of attorneys headed by Anthony Pearson. The interview was aborted after her lawyers advised that she was not feeling well. Hibbert said he sensed they were stalling, buying time. Later on, information was received that some person or persons who were said to practice obeah or voodoo could offer evidence in the case. With this bit of information in hand, Hibbert caused inquiry to be made near and far in order to find these obeah practitioners. 3 were located: 2 brothers from the parish of St. Mary in rural Jamaica and a woman from Vineyard Town in Kingston. All 3 were brought to the CIB headquarters in Kingston to be interviewed by Hibbert. They were kept separately in the flying squad offices downstairs. The younger brother was interviewed first. He was clean-cut, immaculately dressed, well-spoken and cheerful. He spoke of the large number of people who came to see him from time to time, that on Sundays, people in cars from all over Jamaica arrived and lined up on the road where he lived in order to see him. He described the business as flourishing. However, he did not know Mary Lynch or anyone fitting her description to have visited him recently. He was allowed to leave. The other brother had to be helped to Hibbert's office. He was unkempt, untidy, with a long matted grey beard. His finger and toenails appeared as if they had never been cut. They were like claws. He appeared nervous and was shaking. Hibbert presumed he thought he was being interviewed in connection with practicing obeah. Hibbert greeted him cordially and tried to put him at ease. He said, "Officer, me sick with me heart," apparently seeking sympathy. Hibbert informed him that he was aware that he was an obeah man and that people came to him from time to time seeking help. He asked him if a woman named Mary Lynch had been to see him recently. He said many persons came to see him, both male and female, but he could not recall anyone named Mary Lynch. He then went on to relate to Hibbert and his team his many experiences. They all had a good laugh and he was told that he could go. Believe it or not, the man got up and walked towards the door, looking fit and strong, even more zippy than his younger brother. The female obeah practitioner was downstairs, awaiting her turn to be interviewed by Hibbert. Hibbert phoned downstairs and instructed an officer to escort her to his office. The officer in charge of the flying squad advised her that the assistant commissioner would be interviewing her concerning Mrs. Lynch and the death of her husband. He was about to cause her to swear on the Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But suddenly, one of the detectives rushed to Hibbert's office in a frenzy, saying, "ACP Hibbert, the woman dead." Hibbert thought he was joking and said so. The reply was, "No, sir. From the moment we tell her she was coming to your office to be interviewed, she started perspiring, and beads of cold sweat appeared on her forehead. She said she was feeling bad, collapsed, and died." Hibbert gave instructions to have her rushed to the Kingston Public Hospital, where a doctor pronounced her dead. The post-mortem report indicated that she died from a heart attack. So much for obeah and obeah practitioners. Stay tuned for the final part of the Mary Lynch story coming up soon. JBN, we keep you informed. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment, and click the notification bell to receive our daily uploads.